Have you ever wondered if that married man in your life sees you as more than just a friend? Psychology says the signs are there, if you know where to look. Attraction is one of the most powerful forces in human relationships, and sometimes it shows up in the most unexpected places. Many people find themselves questioning whether a married man in their life, perhaps a coworker, a friend, or even an acquaintance, might be showing subtle signs of desire. On the surface, he may appear respectful and committed, but human psychology tells us that unconscious behaviors can reveal much more than words ever do. Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in psychology, believed that our hidden desires often leak out through projection, meaning we show in our actions what we don't consciously admit. This is especially true in relationships where boundaries are blurred. If a married man feels a connection to you, he might not say it openly, but his eyes, body language, and behaviors will quietly speak the truth. For example, he may linger in conversation longer than necessary, laugh at your jokes with a little too much enthusiasm, or, coincidentally, show up in places where he knows you'll be. These may seem like small details, but taken together, they can paint a clear picture of desire. Psychology teaches us that attraction rarely hides, it almost always slips through in subtle ways. In this video, we'll break down 5 secret signs that a married man wants more than friendship. These aren't obvious flirtations or dramatic gestures. Instead, they're quiet signals rooted in human behavior, things you might overlook unless you know what to watch for. By the end, you'll have a clearer understanding of how to interpret his actions and whether he truly sees you as just a friend, or something more. So, if you've ever felt that unspoken tension or wondered if there's more beneath the surface, stay tuned. The psychology behind these signs may surprise you. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, and psychology supports that saying more than most people realize. Eye contact is one of the most powerful forms of nonverbal communication. When a married man desires you, his eyes will often reveal what his words and actions are trying to conceal. Unlike casual glances or polite looks, desire-filled eye contact is longer, deeper, and far more charged. You may notice that he holds your gaze a second too long during a conversation, as though he's searching for something beyond the words you're speaking. This isn't accidental, it's a subconscious leak of his true emotions. Carl Jung believed in the concept of projection, the idea that people often project their hidden thoughts, feelings, and desires onto others. In this case, his prolonged gaze may not just be about you, it's about what you represent to him, an unmet need, a desire he hasn't fully acknowledged, or an attraction he's trying to suppress. His eyes, therefore, become a mirror of his unconscious, showing what his conscious mind is working hard to hide. You may also notice subtle variations in this eye contact. Sometimes, it's intense and unwavering, almost as if he's trying to memorize your face. Other times, he might quickly look away when you catch him staring, creating an almost childlike tension of wanting to look but fearing being caught. Both behaviors are revealing. The lingering gaze signals openness to desire, while the quick, stolen glances often reflect a struggle between attraction and restraint. From a psychological perspective, eye contact is also linked to dopamine release, the chemical in our brain associated with pleasure and reward. Studies show that when people look into the eyes of someone they're attracted to, it activates the brain's reward centers, making the experience not only emotional but also biologically rewarding. This could explain why he seems almost addicted to looking at you, even when he knows he shouldn't. On a practical level, you may feel the weight of his eyes when you walk into a room. Even if he tries to be discreet, you sense his attention shift toward you. You may notice him watching you across a table, during meetings, or even in casual group settings. It feels different from friendly interest, it feels loaded, meaningful, and sometimes, confusing. What makes this sign particularly important is that eye contact bypasses words. Words can be rehearsed, controlled, and hidden, but the eyes rarely lie. A man may keep his mouth shut about his attraction, but his gaze will eventually reveal what his heart is wrestling with. Of course, context matters. Some people are naturally more attentive or warm in their eye contact. But when the gaze lingers with an intensity that feels charged, personal, or almost magnetic, it's usually not just friendship, it's desire peeking through. So, if you've caught a married man locking eyes with you more often than seems natural, especially with that unspoken tension, it may not be your imagination. His eyes might already be telling you a story he's too afraid to say out loud. Attraction isn't always physical. In fact, one of the clearest indicators that a married man desires more than friendship lies in the emotional space he creates with you. When he starts to open up, confide in you, and share parts of his inner world, his feelings, dreams, frustrations, or fears, that's a powerful sign that you've crossed the line from casual connection to something far deeper. Normally, emotional intimacy is reserved for one's closest relationships. For a married man, that space should primarily be with his spouse. So when he begins choosing you as the person he trusts with his private thoughts, it signals a shift. He isn't just looking at you as someone to pass the time with, he's beginning to invest in you emotionally. From a Jungian perspective, this can be understood through the concept of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine aspects of the psyche. Jung believed that people are unconsciously drawn to others who represent parts of themselves they haven't fully integrated. For example, a married man who feels misunderstood, unseen, or emotionally neglected at home may project his unmet needs onto another woman. By opening up to you, he's not just sharing his life, he's unconsciously seeking recognition, validation, and connection that he craves. You'll notice this emotional availability in subtle ways. He may start texting or calling you outside of normal contexts, not for anything urgent, but simply because he wants to talk. He might tell you about challenges at work, conflicts at home, or even his deepest aspirations, the kind of conversations that reveal vulnerability. This isn't surface-level small talk, this is emotional intimacy, the kind of closeness that bonds two people together on a soul level. Why is this such a strong sign of desire? Because emotional intimacy is the foundation of romantic attraction. When a man consistently shares his private world with you, he's building a bridge between you and him, one that often goes beyond friendship. He may not consciously realize it at first, but the more he confides in you, the more he strengthens that emotional connection, and the more difficult it becomes for him to see you as just a friend. There's also a subtle exclusivity here. If he tells you, "I've never shared this with anyone else," or "I can only talk to you about this," that's a major red flag. It means he sees you as a safe haven for his emotions, a role typically reserved for a partner. Over time, this can create a strong emotional bond that blurs the lines between friendship and romantic attraction. On your end, you might notice how these conversations feel different. They might feel heavier, more meaningful, or leave you with a sense of closeness after they end. That's because emotional intimacy creates a sense of shared vulnerability. And when someone lets their guard down around you repeatedly, it often means they trust you on a level that carries more than friendship. So, if a married man is confiding in you deeply, especially about things he doesn't tell his spouse, take note. Emotional availability is rarely casual. It's a sign that you hold a special, intimate space in his life, one that hints at desire he may never say out loud. Carl Jung often emphasized that much of what drives human behavior operates in the unconscious mind. We may believe we are acting rationally, but hidden desires, instincts, and archetypal patterns slip out in subtle ways. One of the clearest areas where this shows up is body language. The body often reveals what the conscious mind tries to suppress. When a married man is attracted to you, he may never openly confess his feelings. But his body will often speak through unconscious gestures. Jung called this the shadow, the repressed part of the psyche that contains desires we don't admit to ourselves or others. In this case, his shadow reveals attraction through nonverbal signals. For instance, he may lean in closer when you talk, even if the situation doesn't require it. This forward movement is a primal instinct, a way of unconsciously closing the distance between himself and the person he desires. In Jungian terms, it's as though his shadow is trying to merge with you, physically closing the gap that his conscious mind insists should remain. Another common sign is mirroring. Jung believed in the concept of the collective unconscious, where shared human behaviors and instincts emerge across cultures. Mirroring is one of those instinctive behaviors. When he copies your posture, gestures, or expressions, it signals a deep psychological alignment. On an unconscious level, it's as though he is saying, "I want to be in harmony with you." You may also notice small, almost accidental touches, a hand on your arm, brushing past you, or finding excuses to make physical contact. Jung might interpret this as the projection of his anima, the feminine aspect within him, onto you. By touching you, he unconsciously seeks connection with the qualities he perceives in you, qualities that awaken something within his own psyche. Even the way he positions his body speaks volumes. Does he face you fully, with shoulders and feet directed toward you? In Jungian analysis, orientation is symbolic. He may not consciously decide to give you his full attention, but the body arranges itself toward what the psyche desires. Similarly, nervous grooming gestures, straightening his clothes, adjusting his hair, can be linked to archetypal courtship behaviors. Jung argued that archetypes are patterns inherited through the collective unconscious, and courtship signals are some of the oldest. What's important to understand here is that these body language shifts are rarely deliberate. A married man may be fully committed to his role as husband, consciously choosing to respect boundaries. But his unconscious archetypes and shadow desires do not disappear, they leak out through posture, gestures, and touch. His body, in effect, becomes the messenger of his hidden truth. So when you notice a married man consistently leaning closer, mirroring your actions, or finding subtle ways to make contact, you're not just observing random behavior. You're witnessing the language of the unconscious at work. In Jung's framework, this is the shadow expressing itself physically, the unspoken confession of a desire that words cannot safely carry. Carl Jung believed that human beings are often strangers to themselves. Beneath the surface of our conscious personality lies the shadow, a hidden part of the psyche where repressed desires, impulses, and emotions reside. Jealousy and protectiveness are powerful examples of shadow energy slipping into the open. When a married man becomes jealous or overly protective toward you, especially when you mention other men, it is rarely about logic. On the surface, he may excuse his behavior as concern or friendship. But according to Jung, what is really happening is the eruption of unconscious desire. His shadow self, the part of him that craves intimacy with you but cannot admit it, expresses itself through jealousy. This reaction is often sudden and emotional. For instance, you might notice his tone shift when you casually mention going out with another man. He may grow quiet, change the subject, or dismiss the other man with criticism. Sometimes, he disguises this feeling as protectiveness, warning you that someone isn't good enough for you or suggesting you deserve better. But beneath the words lies a deeper truth: he wants that role for himself, even if his conscious self cannot admit it. Jung also described the process of projection, when a person sees their own unconscious feelings mirrored in another. In this case, the married man may project his own hidden attraction onto you, imagining that you are too important to lose, or in need of his protection. His mind creates narratives to justify his jealousy, but these stories are really defenses against acknowledging his own desire. Protectiveness can also be linked to Jung's idea of the animus, the masculine archetype within the psyche. By stepping into the role of protector, he unconsciously casts himself as your guardian, assigning himself significance in your life. This role gives him a sense of closeness to you, even if he never expresses his attraction directly. From Jung's perspective, jealousy is also a signal of inner conflict. On one side, his conscious ego insists that he is faithful, loyal, and in control. On the other side, his unconscious is alive with attraction, yearning, and desire. The tension between these two forces creates emotional instability, which you see as sudden changes in mood when other men are mentioned. Jung might say his conscious persona, the mask he shows the world, is cracking under the pressure of his unconscious feelings. What makes jealousy such a telling sign is that it is rarely rational. Friends don't feel possessive. Friends don't worry about being replaced. When a married man becomes unsettled by the thought of you with someone else, it shows he sees you as more than just a friend. In Jung's experience, emotions like jealousy are windows into the unconscious. They expose what the conscious mind struggles to admit. So if you notice a married man growing protective, critical, or uncomfortable when you mention other men, you are not imagining it. His shadow has spoken, and in that moment, his hidden desire has found a way to reveal itself. Have you ever noticed that a married man always seems to, coincidentally, be where you are? Maybe he shows up in the hallway just as you're leaving a meeting, or you run into him in places where you normally wouldn't expect him. On the surface, these moments may appear accidental, but when they happen often, psychology suggests otherwise. Carl Jung had a fascinating concept called synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence. He believed that seemingly random events often reveal deeper psychological connections. In the context of attraction, repeated coincidences may not simply be fate. Instead, they can reflect the unconscious mind creating opportunities for closeness. For a married man who desires you, his conscious self may hold back, bound by social rules and personal commitments. But his unconscious drives often find subtle ways to move him closer to you. He might suddenly discover reasons to be in your workspace, accidentally choose the same lunch spot, or join activities he never showed interest in before, just to share proximity with you. This pattern can also be explained by Jung's idea of projection. If he has projected qualities of his anima, the inner feminine archetype, onto you, then being near you feels like being closer to an essential part of himself. Even if he doesn't realize it consciously, he is drawn to you because, in you, he sees something that awakens him internally. The result? His choices, even small ones, keep guiding him into your orbit. Over time, these coincidences may even start to feel intentional. You might notice that he lingers when he doesn't have to, that he volunteers for projects or tasks that involve you, or that he conveniently appears during moments when you're alone. This isn't random. It's his unconscious desire creating patterns of closeness. Protectiveness and jealousy, which we discussed earlier, are emotional signs of desire. But these coincidences are behavioral. Jung would argue that they reflect the conflict between the persona, the public mask of being the loyal, married man, and the shadow, which contains his hidden attraction. While his persona tries to maintain boundaries, his shadow drives him into your presence. Psychologically, proximity fuels intimacy. The more often he is around you, the stronger the bond becomes. Even without words, these repeated encounters create a sense of shared rhythm, a familiarity that deepens connection. For him, being near you satisfies a hidden craving. For you, it may raise questions. Why is he always around? Is this just chance? According to Jung, there are no just chances when the unconscious is at work. So if you notice that a married man is consistently present in your life in ways that feel more than accidental, pay attention. In Jungian terms, it may not be coincidence at all. It is likely the unconscious at play, his desire slipping through the cracks of circumstance, drawing him into your space again and again. In other words, his shadow has chosen proximity as its language. And every chance encounter is actually a silent confession of what he feels but cannot say. So, let's step back and reflect. We've explored 5 powerful signs: intense eye contact, emotional availability, body language shifts, jealousy or protectiveness, and those frequent coincidences. Each of these, when viewed through the lens of Carl Jung's psychology, reveals something important, that the unconscious always finds a way to speak, even when the conscious self tries to remain silent. Jung taught us that our hidden desires live in the shadow, the part of ourselves we often deny or suppress. For a married man, attraction towards someone outside his relationship is rarely admitted openly. Yet, his unconscious reveals it through glances, gestures, emotions, and patterns of behavior. His eyes linger when they shouldn't. His body leans closer even when his words say nothing. His jealousy sparks without reason. And his presence in your life begins to feel like fate, when in fact, it may be the pull of his unconscious desire. But here's the key point: recognizing these signs is not about judgment, it's about awareness. When you understand the psychology behind his behavior, you gain clarity. You can decide whether to step back, maintain boundaries, or navigate the situation with caution. As Jung often reminded us, what we fail to make conscious will control us from the shadows. By seeing these signs for what they are, you bring unconscious dynamics into the light. That awareness gives you the power to make choices that protect your well-being and preserve your peace. So the next time you wonder whether a married man sees you as more than a friend, look beyond his words. Watch his eyes, his emotions, his body language, and the patterns of his presence. Chances are, his unconscious has already spoken. If you found these insights eye-opening, remember, awareness is your greatest tool. Relationships, attraction, and human behavior are complex, but when you understand the psychology behind them, you're no longer left guessing, you can see clearly what's really happening beneath the surface. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever noticed these signs in your own life? Maybe a married man who seemed a little too protective, or someone whose eyes lingered longer than they should? Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. I read every one, and your perspective might even help someone else going through the same thing. If this video gave you clarity, don't forget to like it. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more content that blends psychology, relationships, and Carl Jung's timeless wisdom, hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss a future video. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Remember, the unconscious always speaks, you just have to know how to listen. Until next time, take care of yourself and your mind.